Welcome to the basement workshop. These are my tools. In order to build out my shop, I have to make a table, which is tricky when you don't have one. These are all the tools that I currently own, and those are my roommates over there. A few more tools. And then here's all my materials. That'll be my sheet steel tabletop. It's 1/4 inch plate. And here's my stuff for the table. I've got 3x3 tubing, 3x3 angle, 1.5" flat bar angle, and then I have 1/4 inch by 4 flat bar. I'm using a chop saw, but I would rather have a bandsaw to do these cuts. The chop saw won't cut all the way through, so I'm either going to break it off or I have to rotate the piece that I'm cutting in order to get a full cut on it, and it makes some of my pieces not turn out as square as I want them. I'll be getting a bandsaw a little bit later in order to make my cuts cleaner and make this process just a little bit faster. The chop saw is also very consumable, so you can see all my dust sitting around. The bandsaw, while technically consumable, will just be easier to use. So here's my little tabletop. So in blacksmithing, there's a mantra that you need to make a tool in order to make a thing. It usually applies to making hammers, where you use a hammer to make another hammer, and so you need what you don't have in order to make what you need. And it applies here because I don't have a table, but I need a table. So these sawhorses kind of do the trick to bridge that gap. So I have to clean up all my ends on all my pieces because they're not as square, and I'm bringing them down to the correct size to make my welding a little bit easier, so I don't have as many big gaps in my work. I also left my tabletop outside a little bit too long, and it got rained on, so I have to clear off some of the rust that got on it so I can put some marks on my table. I'm going to be doing a little bit of a layout on top of my tabletop that I'm going to use as a jig to weld my table legs together. So I have to I put 2 legs and the bracing in between them, and then I'll be making 2 of these. Clamp everything down. You don't want things moving when you're welding. Always check to see if you're square. I'm checking corner to corner to see how far out of square I am on my pieces, and then doing a few quick tacks so that they can go together. After doing 2 of those, I put them vertical like this and tack them together. And then flip it and then add the final bracing, and I'll have my box that's going to be the main section of my table. I have to clamp it a little bit to move it around because it's not completely square, but this brings it into square, even though it definitely looks out of square in these shots. I think that's just the camera. So this is the cap that's going to go on the bottom of my legs. This is going to have a hole drilled into it so I can put casters on it, and I'll be welding a nut onto it later too. Cleaning up the edges so that they're a little bit more square and there's nothing sharp on them. I use my combo square and the 45 degrees on it to find the center of my piece pretty easily when all of my pieces aren't exactly the same. That's from the hand grinding. This is a note to myself to get a spray bottle for my drill press. I use a water and soap mixture in order to cool my drill bits to keep them sharp a little bit longer, and it also helps cut through the steel better. There's products you can get that do the same thing, but soap and water works fine and it's less of a mess. So I'm just preparing the caps with the casters and the nut, so it's all secured there, but I'm going to give it a little weld in order to make it secure. I can still take the caster off, but this is the fastest way to get them together. This is flux core welding. It's the first time I've done it. I'm borrowing my roommate's welder. It's pretty nice because there's no shielding gas. The wire has a little bit of flux in it, thus the name flux core. It has really good penetration and into the materials, so it's a pretty solid weld, and it's cost comparable to having MIG and gas. So here's my box, and I'm setting my casters up. I'll be putting 2 tacks on these, and then I'll be doing some bigger welds to get it all together. So I'm doing a lot of welding here. I could fully weld every single part of it and I'd have a very sturdy table, but I only need to do full welds on these 1.5 inch angles, and then I do 2 about inch long welds on all of my tubing and 3x3 angle. So it's strong enough and will hold itself together, but it's not completely welded through. I didn't want to use up too much wire. So here I'm just going to flip it over and then put my tabletop on it. So it moves around pretty nicely, and so I can move it around my shop without a problem.
I wanted them square, would be around.
Quality joke right there. Welding the caps on a little bit more. Squaring up the tabletop to my table box, and then putting a few tacks on it so it won't move. I'm not fully welding it because I want it to be able to take it off pretty easily and replace it with a thicker plate when I can. I want something about 3/4 of an inch so it won't warp as easily. And oops, I can fix that. Thanks for watching.